All right, we are on the second type of factoring called the AC method. But before we go any further, I want to talk about why we factor. Because it seems like we jumped from like looking at the shapes and talking about the zeros to factoring, and we factor to find zeros. So if I went back to one of our things from yesterday I think we factored, let's see, I think it was like one from yesterday would have been x squared minus 14x plus 49. And we factored it into these factors. Okay, so that's one thing. This is one skill, is factor. Okay, the next skill, if you will, is to solve. And solve means find the x's that make the function equals 0. So you'd see it like this if I said solve. So what makes it equal 0 and why? This is where the roots are, the zeros are, the x-intercepts. That really helps us graph, right? And I am going to continue to factor like this. And now I've got that equals 0 there because I do want to know. I want to know if I put in a number, what could that number be? Now in this case, they're both the same, right? Generally, I would say you set each of these equal to 0 and solve. And this is like opposite of what we were doing when we were talking about I give you the zeros, you give me the equation. I gave you the equation, you give me the zeros. Now this only has 1, right, at 7. And if I was really thinking about bringing it back to all the stuff we've learned so far, I would know that this is a second degree, so it's a parabola, it's a quadratic, and it has 1 0, and it crosses right there at 7. It just touches that x-axis. So that's a big reason why we factor. So we're practicing factoring, and I haven't been saying solve. I've been saying factor, because those are two different skills. One is to factor, and one is to solve. And so we're going to keep practicing factoring, and we will bring it back to solving, where we're getting zeros. But keep that in mind. As we're factoring, we're doing factoring to be able to solve, which means to find the zeros, which means that we know the x-intercepts. So I call this the AC method. And let me tell you, when Mrs. Vogt was in high school, this method was just called guess and check. And I hated it. It was not this method, actually. It was the only method that I knew how to use, and I really struggled with it. And so for me, this AC method gives me a really concrete way to factor, and I like that because guess and check was too, like, I don't know, I couldn't quite get a handle on it. If you find guess and check to be a good way for you, go ahead. Okay, just know that I struggle with that, and so I'm going to do AC method. And I call it the AC method because, look at, I'm going to take A and C, and I'm going to multiply them. So A times C, in this case, is 4 times negative 5. So I get negative 20. And then I want factors of negative 20 that add to, well, it's right here. That's a 1, right? If there's no letter there. So factors of negative 20 that add to 1. So we're kind of back to what we were doing yesterday, the first part of factoring. We're looking for factors of the number that add to the middle term. So like I have 1 and 20 and 2, 10, 3, 4 and 5. Oh, 4 and 5 are a good match. And because this is negative here, I know one of these needs to be negative, and I'm going to say negative 4. All right, so here's where things get really tricky. I'm going to take this middle term and break it apart. So I'm going to copy down 4x squared, and I've got my negative 5. And instead of writing 1x, I'm going to take my pair here, and I'm going to write minus 4x plus 5x. Now, hopefully you see that if I asked you to FOIL the factors out, you get this, and then you combine like terms. Normally you're moving this way up the chain, right? If I gave you 4x squared minus 4x plus 5x minus 5, you would tell me when you combined like terms that you had 4x squared plus 1x minus 5. So I'm in essence, uncombining like terms. Okay, and then you're going to take your pen or your pencil and you're literally going to divide this in half. And this part is the part that in the next video we'll just call grouping. So we're dividing it into two groups. And then out of the left group, I'm going to factor. What can I factor out? I can factor out a 4x. And I'm left with x minus 1 when I factor a 4x out of the first half only. And out of the next half, I can factor a positive 5. And I'm left with x minus 1. Now, this is how you know you did it right. Do these match? And if they match, that's good because you're going to factor that out. In essence, you factor it out. The shortcut way is to think one of your factors is what I've highlighted there in pink, and then the other factor is what's left, the 5x plus 4. And I said it backwards, the 4x plus 5. And these are your two factors here. Don't worry, I will do it again. Okay? So, let's pick a different color. This is your other factor. So that matches this one, and this matches that one. Okay, I'll do this one more time for you. A times c, 3 times negative 2, and I get negative 6. And I want factors of negative 6 that add to positive 5. So I think I'm going to choose positive 6 and negative 1. Okay, and then again, I'm going to rewrite this middle term. I'm going to uncombine like terms. So 3x squared is now going to be plus 6x minus 1x minus 2. And then you might say to me, Ms. Vogt, why did you not put 1 and then 6? And you will get the right answer no matter what. Sometimes I just decide, well, I know 3 and 6 have a common factor, so I really want to stick them together. So that was part of my reasoning right there. Then I'm going to cut it in half. I'm doing grouping. Now I'm grouping it. In the first half, I can take out a 3x, and I'm left with x plus 2. And remember, it's good to factor that negative out. We talked about that in the previous video. I'm going to factor a negative 1 out of this. And again, I'm left with x plus 2. And that's good because we want these to match. They should be the same thing. So one factor is 3x minus 1. And the other factor is x plus 2. Okay, factoring is one skill. If I asked you, could you solve these? Then you would set these both equal to 0. And you would solve. And over here I would say x plus 2 equals 0 and x equals negative 2. And these would be my zeros. So if I was looking at this parabola, at 1/3 and negative 2, it would look something like this. Okay? And so bringing it back to that first thing, the shape. I know it's an x squared. It makes us smile. I know it's positive. It makes that smile. And now I use factoring to find exactly where those zeros are. We have one more type of factoring we will talk about in the next video.